You know, it's easy to think that great empires are permanent. I mean, they build these incredible things in stone and bronze, and they're convinced they're going to last forever. But, well, history has a very different story to tell. It shows us that even the mightiest civilizations, no matter how advanced they seem, can completely shatter. So today, we're going to dig in and uncover the grim and, frankly, repeating patterns behind why worlds end.
Wow. Just imagine writing those words. This isn't some abstract bit of history, right? This is the raw terror of a society that is completely coming apart at the seams. This one desperate line from a monk named Gildas really captures that feeling of utter hopelessness, of living through a total collapse, literally trapped between two kinds of death. So what is it? Is it invaders? Is it the climate? Or maybe it's some fatal flaw baked into the system itself. To figure this out, we're going to investigate two historical apocalypses. They're separated by 1,500 years, but we're going to see if we can find a shared blueprint for disaster, a kind of recipe for collapse.
All right, our first case file. This one takes us back more than 3,000 years to the late Bronze Age, and you got to get this picture out of your head of primitive tribes. This was not that. This was an age of absolute giants. The Egyptian New Kingdom, the powerful Hittite Empire, the Mycenaean Greeks of Trojan War fame. This was a truly international system, all connected by sea lanes and sprawling desert roads. This whole system was built on an incredible level of connection. These great kings, as they called each other, were constantly writing letters back and forth, setting up trade deals, arranging royal marriages, and their military power? It was all built on bronze. And bronze requires a super complex supply chain. See, you might have copper nearby, but the really essential ingredient, tin, had to be dragged thousands of miles from places like modern-day Afghanistan. This was basically the first great age of globalization. And then, it all just burned. Look at how fast this happens. We're talking centuries of stability, gone in the span of a single person's lifetime. Palaces were torched, entire cities were abandoned, trade routes just stopped. For anyone who survived, it was a true dark age. The actual skill of writing was forgotten in a lot of places for hundreds of years. So what happened? Hold that question. Let's jump to our second case file.
All right, now we leap forward to the 5th century AD. The Western Roman Empire is crumbling, and it pulls its legions out of the province of Britannia. But what they left behind wasn't some new beginning. It was a catastrophic implosion of society.
The regression was just staggering. The complex urban world that Rome had built just vanished. The economy went back to simple bartering because coins weren't being made anymore. Grand stone buildings couldn't be repaired, so they just crumbled into ruins. Society itself fractured into these tiny kingdoms run by warlords, all fighting over the scraps of a fallen empire. And the human cost of this was immense. This wasn't just some political change. The complete breakdown of the Roman system, its trade, its security, its basic infrastructure, it led to a demographic catastrophe. The population of Britain may have been cut in half from this systemic failure alone. And get this, that's even before the famous plagues of the 6th century showed up to make everything so much worse.
Okay, so we've got two collapses thousands of years apart that look eerily similar, right? A sophisticated society implodes, cities fall, knowledge gets lost. It is time to place them side by side and find that recipe.
First ingredient, both of them face pressure from mobile groups arriving by sea. In the Bronze Age, Egyptian records talk about the Sea Peoples, this mysterious confederation of raiders who just swept across the Mediterranean. In Britain, it was Germanic groups, the Angles, the Saxons, who first showed up as mercenaries and then later as settlers and conquerors. In both cases, you have outsiders exploiting a system that's already starting to weaken.
Second ingredient, and this one is a big one. Both collapses were hit with a massive environmental shock right before they fell. Climate data shows the late Bronze Age collapse happened at the same time as a 300-year mega-drought that caused widespread famine. And in post-Roman Britain, a huge volcanic eruption in 536 AD threw so much ash into the atmosphere that the sun literally dimmed for over a year, causing crops to fail all over the globe. The very foundation of their world, agriculture, was just pulled out from under them.
So these stressors, the climate shocks, and the outsiders, they didn't just cause a few problems. They triggered what historians now call a systems collapse. You see, complex societies are kind of like intricate machines. They're super efficient, but they're also very fragile. And if one critical component breaks, say a major trade route or the food supply, it doesn't just fail by itself. It creates this cascading failure, a domino effect, that brings the entire machine grinding to a halt.
And this domino effect, it follows a shockingly predictable pattern. First, the complex supply chains that the elites depend on get cut. No more tin means no more bronze for the Hittites. No more pay means no more legions for Britain. Second, without the resources to project power, the central government just evaporates. And finally, the old ruling class gets swept away, and with them goes all the specialized knowledge they supported, like how to write. The entire system just unravels from the top down.
So there you have it. Two different worlds, but two remarkably similar stories. It was a perfect storm of climate disaster, external pressure, and some kind of internal fragility. The details change, but the core components, the anatomy of the collapse, they stay hauntingly the same.
Look, this isn't just a fascinating history lesson. The patterns of the past are actually powerful warnings, because the factors that brought down these ancient worlds, well, they haven't gone away.
That recipe for collapse is surprisingly consistent. It goes something like this. A sudden climate shock destabilizes the food supply. That puts a ton of pressure on populations, causing migration and conflict. Those pressures then hit a complex, interconnected system right at its weakest points, which causes this cascade of failures. And, often, new ways of fighting pop up out of the chaos that the old powers just can't adapt to.
Which of course brings us to today. Our global civilization is the most complex, interconnected system in all of human history. We rely on supply chains that span the entire globe for literally everything, from the food we eat to the phones in our pockets. So the question these ancient collapses force us to ask is a pretty stark one. Has all our interconnectedness made us resilient enough to handle the shocks of the future? Or have we simply built a more elaborate, more complicated set of dominoes just waiting for the right push?